Hey guys, this is Shaun with Guild Outfitters here. I'm so excited to jump in. We are finally doing our install video for the 400 watt anytime harness. And I've got my pal here with me, Luna, our K9, and we're gonna go ahead and jump into everything you're gonna need and how to do this install right now. Redside Electric 400 watt in-motion harness install. Now, this is going to allow you that when you press the button in the cab to run at 400 watt in the bed outlet, you can put the truck in drive and be in motion and maintain that 400 watt additional power. If you just are doing this first simple part of the install, the only tools that you're gonna need are a 10mm socket, an extension will make your life easier, some type of a pry tool to carefully remove the interior panels. If you want to buy these, we actually sell them on our website. And if you don't want to, you can just use a flathead screwdriver. I recommend one that's not too sharp, something a little bit blunt and wider. Don't want to damage any of those panels. They are soft. The last thing you're going to need is some black electrical tape. And that's going to be everything you need if you're just doing that install of the harness to run that additional power while in motion. Now, if you want to take this a step farther, the one unique thing about buying this harness from Guild Outfitters is we've actually had them extend this clip that's included on there so that you can add the Toyota socket power, which gives you a 110 volt plug inside the cab. Now, we're going to show you a couple locations inside the cab where you can install this, but the tools that you're going to need to do that are a pair of scissors. If you buy this from us, we're also going to include a piece you can cut and trim so you make the exact right size hole you need to put that in. To mark that hole, you're going to want a pencil or chalk, something that's not going to make anything permanent. In order to then be able to cut that out, I recommend using a step bit, something that's large enough that fits the size of this saw or something like that. If you don't have that, a simple 1/2-inch drill bit will work. That's pretty standard in any kit. The other tools that you're going to need are a Phillips head screwdriver. I prefer the longer one. A shorter one will do as well. If you have this handsaw, they're like $12. This is going to be the best way to cut any of your interior panels. If you don't have that, you can simply get one of these cheap knives like this. This will do a great job as well because you can get a sawing motion going and obviously a drill. All right, babe, you want ahead and jump down? Come on. There we go. All right. All right, guys, now the first thing that you're going to want to do is go ahead and get all your tools, lay them out on the floor mat. That's my recommendation. Open up the center glove box here, and then we're going to go ahead and jump right into everything you're going to need to do. I'm going to move the camera overhead so that you can see everything as we go through the next few steps. Okay, guys, once you've got all your tools inside and everything ready, the first tip here is actually going to be open up your center console, reach in and remove this felt piece of trim that goes in the bottom. Then you're going to want to go ahead and pull your e-brake up, grab your shifter, push this down. That'll simply pop it off of the knob, and you can just twist that off. It's really that easy. Set this aside up on your dash. If you have a chrome delete trim piece, set that aside. You're not going to want to lose that. Then go ahead and grab your trim removal tool. I have found it's easiest to start on this side. Place this in, work your way around, and start to pry that up. Once you've got at least that one side started, you can get a little hand on it here and pull that up. You'll find that starts to pop off. Shimmy this around the e-brake. There's 2 more pops up here in the front. Grab each side, pop that. Once you get this up, you've got a couple options. You can just set this aside carefully out of the way here over onto the driver's seat. Or you can actually remove this piece here. It just pops off of the boot, and it's pretty simple to pop back in. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Once you do that, you can simply set this aside. I'm going to set it into the back seat here, and then just push this back down so it's out of our way. Now we're going to remove the rear center console so we can access the inverter. Get yourself your 10mm socket. You'll find that these are not that tight. In fact, they're probably loosened up. And once you loosen them up, it's pretty easy if you just drop that off and then just spin this around and remove these 2 bolts by hand. Let me do that. All right, once you've got those out, set these bolts aside carefully so you remember to put them back in. The next step that you're going to want to do is there's a piece of tape here on the front side. Simply remove this tape to some wires here that attach to your USB power charging port. That'll free this up so you've got a little more room. You can then unclip this little black clip. It's going to be on the passenger side where you press in and then carefully pull. You don't want to pull on any of these too hard. You don't want to pull on the wires. You just want to press that in and remove that on any of these clips that we're going to be undoing. The next step here is to separate the center console from the front trim. Just press and pull here. This should lift up and pry off of this front part. You'll do that to both sides. Once that pops off, it's actually that easy to just simply remove your center console. I like to grab it, lift it forward, and then just slide it back. You'll find that it comes right out. Now, one of the places you can do this is to just set this into the back seat, driver's seat, wherever you need to, but don't set it too far away. Now, the next step here is this is the harness that goes into the inverter. We are going to simply be pressing this in to release. So let's go ahead and do that. Press this in. You kind of wiggle it, and then it'll suddenly pop. Not a lot of room, but you can easily get that out. Then grab your 10mm socket again, put that back on. Loosen up this bolt here for this ground. Same thing again, once you get it loose, it's just easiest to just do it by hand. I don't recommend using power tools for any of these. These are really meant to be hand loosened and hand tightened. Now you can get your Redside Electric 400 watt anytime harness. All this is really doing is overriding this so that you can still operate while in gear. Now, Redside Electric has looked into this and says that this is going to be absolutely fine. So we're just going off of their expertise on this, and we have had no issue with the ones we've installed so far. In fact, we love it. Once you get this here, you can pop this down in, snap it into here, and make sure it's snapped there as well. The next step here, I've actually put some black electrical tape on here already because you're not going to need all of that. And you're just going to place this on here, grab that bolt again, put the bolt through the eyelet, and tighten down to get that ground wire on there. Again, just hand tight to get it started. Now, I recommend putting it onto this side here. It's just really easy to slip it to that side. And then all you're going to want to do is just hand tighten this, nothing crazy. I recommend putting your thumb onto this so that it doesn't turn when you turn the bolt. And give it just about 2 turns. Once you've got that ground bolt tightened back in there, you'll see that you have this additional length of wire. If you are not doing the additional socket install, then what you're going to want to do is take this harness, and what I recommend is feeding it along the side here. It'll feed through a kind of tunnel of this bracket right here, and then just feed this up into the front where the cup holder is. Once you have that to where it's going to go, you can then take this and tape the wire against some of these other wires up here. What that is really key is it'll keep this harness out of any of your mechanical. This is where your emergency brake is and your shifter. You don't want that wire just laying in here. Not recommended at all. Bring that up to the front, tape it, and then bring some electrical tape back here. Tape this here to this additional harness that's already there. That way that's nice and secure, out of the way. And then you can just tuck this right here. This is obviously fine where it's at and out of the way. Everything should be good to go. Now, if you're going to be doing the optional install where you're actually going to be using the additional socket powered outlet inside the cab, if you're going to be installing it up here in the front, which I'm going to show you in the video, you can leave this up here like we just showed. If you're not gonna wanna put it up into the side of the center console and you wanna put it into the back of the center console, we'll go through those steps as well. Now, the real key when you do this is that you want to realize that up inside of here is actually a piece of trim that sits on top of this inverter to direct any airflow out of these vents out of the back. So you can't put the harness and the socket in this area, and you can't put it right here. You also don't want to come all the way up here because you've got your cup holder, but you can easily feel in, just using your finger, you can tell that right there is about the bottom of the cup holder. Reaching in right here, that's about the bottom of where that plastic's at. So anywhere right in here is a great spot where you can take that piece of paper that's included if you buy the socket from us, cut that out, and then mark the hole that you're going to cut, or you can tape this on, then take your drill, drill this hole into the center, or if you're risky, you can drill it right to the corner edge, and then all you gotta do is take your handsaw and start cutting that to the edge of the paper or the edge of the hole that you have penciled or marked on with chalk. Once you've gotten that cut out, you'll find that that is just probably slightly undersized, where you can possibly push this in, just kind of feel it up, see if it starts to fit. You'll notice if you put this onto the paper part here that it does fit through. If you cut it to the black lines, it's just a little tight. And again, that's because you can always file the hole slightly larger, but I didn't want to make this oversized where this was loose and then your socket wasn't secure into the panel. So you can see that's easily how that would work, sized up, and have that in the back. Now, I'm not showing you how to cut that on this because I don't want to put mine in the rear of the center console. I actually want to put mine up here in the front part. So I'm going to go ahead and go through those steps in more detail. So I'm going to fish this back through underneath this arm here, feed it to myself, pull it through. And then again, I'm going to recommend that you get some tape and tape this wire harness off. Now, this harness is pretty long. You've got a few options where you can choose. I highly recommend looking up here in the front side of the footwell. I do not recommend putting this into the driver's side for any reason. It is not safe to have wires sticking out into your footwell. That is not recommended by us. The other thing you have to consider is you can't just plop it right here. This is where your cup holder is going to pop down in, and you don't want to get all excited and start cutting your hole right here because it looks like a great spot, and then go to put that cup holder in and realize that there is not enough room for the powered outlet to sit and still have the cup holder. So you're going to need to put that up into this space. Now you can put it level up in here where we're going to. There's also some other spots along in here. You can see that if you tried to put it, it's just not going to work because of this bracket for your gear shift. Now, if you've got a manual truck, this will be slightly more forward, but you'll still find that there's not enough room in general to put it in this area. So you can use the back of the center console example like we described, or up here in the front footwell where I like it, so that I can easily plug things in while I'm driving. I'm not reaching around behind me. And then I can lay my laptop up here when I'm in the passenger seat working, which I work out of the truck frequently. All right, guys, so let's reorientate the camera and show you how we're going to cut this. All right, guys, I have now repositioned down here to the passenger footwell so that you can easily see where I'm going to be installing my outlet. I think it's going to be the best use for me to put this right about in here in my truck. That'll keep it above where any water might get splashed. It's got that cover on there. It's easier to use than in the back of the cab where someone might be kicking it with their foot. I think this is just going to be the best case for me when I'm driving around, working in my truck, using my laptop or other devices. Now, you can remove this piece. It's not that hard. There's just a screw here, and a screw on the other side. And then this will actually lift up and with a tug release from here from a snap, and same thing on the other side. The only thing you may have to unplug is if you have the wireless charging pad. There is a connector that's right up in here. It's very simple. It's easy to see. The click is on top and you just pull that right out. Just make sure you plug that back in afterwards if you choose to remove it. However, you really don't need to, because with the cup holder and everything removed, it's really easy to reach in up underneath here and feel where right from about here down is open until about here. I'm just reaching in there, finding that spot that I like. I'm going to go somewhere right in here and put that outlet in. And then what I am, to mark that, carefully going to do is I've cut out this from my paper, and I'm going to grab some electrical tape here and just tape that on so that I can start to do my cutting and drilling. So I'm going to go ahead and grab just a couple pieces of tape so that I can tape this on. Obviously Scotch tape would work as well. This is just what I had handy, and we're using the electrical tape to tape up some of the harness. So figure out where that is that you're going to want to place this. Put your tape across the top here. Find that spot that's going to work best for you. Now I think it's going to be right here for me. I recommend, this is one of those things you want to measure twice, maybe 3 times before you cut once. Don't want to have to replace this center panel. It's about $90 if you need to. And there's a few different versions, so you don't want to end up playing with that whole mess. Now I have found right here that this seems like it's going to be a great spot. There is a little bit of foam backing on this that I'm going to cut through as well. Some trucks don't have that. I think it was a newer addition on the 22s of just some additional sound dampening material on the inside of this plastic. So then once you have that taped, you can take your pencil, you can mark it, and you can start cutting your hole, or you can take some chalk that on. I'm actually just going to go ahead and leave this right here where I've got it and do my install right here the way that I have it. Again, just making sure you've got plenty of room where you're picking, that you're not going to run into your bracket, run into anything that's down there. You can bring this a little bit more forward. The other thing, like I had mentioned before, that you just want to be really careful about is where the center console front cup holders sit at. You can see here that these sit down and you've got some brackets here. So you just need to be careful of where you're placing that you are in front of where this is going to be, but not so far forward that you're running into anything else, and not so high up that you're running into anything. That's my recommendation. Let's jump in and get to it. I've got my step in on here. I have found this is the best thing for me. I'm just going to kind of start down here into one of the bottom corner areas and begin. I think I'm going to have to finish this off. Like I mentioned, there may be some foam there that you're cutting away. This is going to get shavings everywhere, so I highly recommend that you have a vacuum as well. I forgot to mention that, to vacuum this up, where you can just go down to the car wash afterwards, clean up the taco, clean this up then. So once you've got this here, just go ahead and start hand cutting this. Now I'm going to go ahead and pull some of this foam backing back and just rip that off a little bit over here so that that piece is out of the way of where I'm cutting and working. I also do not recommend using any power cutting tools when you're cutting any of these interior panels. It's just really not necessary. It's too much power. You're way too likely to cut something. One of these hand saws works absolutely great. It's worth the investment if you're going to be modding your taco. Just start breaking these pieces out like that, sawing this away, kind of making these little curved cuts up into the corners. Again, just breaking these little pieces into triangles away, and then just working to clean that up slowly as you come around. Again, just continue cutting this, getting these little pieces away. Careful you're not cutting your carpet back there. Now, I haven't done that yet, but I could see someone doing that if you're not being careful how deep you're going underneath here. Again, I'm just now going around and trimming some little pieces off, working it to the edge of the paper, pulling away that insulation again. I just don't want any of that back there right next to where the outlet is, where it could get warm. Now this is where if you have a file, you could grab your file and trim this up as well. I find it cuts pretty well though too, to just keep cutting it to the way you need, to where you're gonna try this out. Once you've got it to where you think it's pretty much good to go, the one thing I'm going to warn you about these outlets, these clips on the sides are really stiff. Once they pop in, they're really hard to pop out. So I don't recommend just jamming this in, because if you get one side to pop and the other side won't fit, I have broken these clips before. So you just want to dry fit this, see how you're doing. Now you can see here, I'm still a little bit too small. This is where you're just going to want to keep trimming around these edges. What you can do is go ahead and remove your tape. You feel that there's probably some shavings that have dropped in there. Don't worry, you haven't scuffed it. Knock those off with your thumb. You'll see that cleans up pretty well. That also gives you a chance to look and see how square everything looks, and you can come back if you need and just touch up any spots. On the sides there. Make sure your corners look nice and clean. And then you can grab that vacuum, try to do a cleanup. Now be careful you don't suck up your bolts or anything if you're using a shop vac. I'm going to go ahead and set my bolts, my tools, all out of the way here so that I'm all set and don't suck up anything that I don't intend to. that'll just be one more problem to have to sort out. You may want to come on the inside here and try to get some as well. You can also lift this up a little bit. Make sure you've gotten everything out of there. Do be careful, this material does scratch easily. I have found if you just rub it back, the scuffs do go away, but you want to be careful when you're cleaning this up. Obviously want the taco to look great. Just like that, you've got it in. There's your outlet. Pretty snap secure. Now, one thing you can do is you can connect this before or after. I'm going to do it after here. Put that connector into the back so that it has power. And then you're going to tape up this harness. I'm going to switch the camera back to the overhead view to do the final assembly. All right, guys. First thing you're going to want to do is make sure that you've gotten your wires taped up and secured out of the way. You'll notice that the wire down here, there's already some tape holding the other ground wires here. I'm just going to wrap this around. Really only need to get it around at least once. And then what I'm going to do, because I always like to make things easier for the future, is just take the end of the tape and stick it to itself so that's always easier for removal later, should I ever want to. Put that here. You'll find that this part of the harness here can tuck out of the way here. So I'm just going to tuck that like this. And then going to use a couple other pieces of tape up here in the front, pulling this wire harness around and taping it to the other wire that's up here. Again, same thing, putting that little tail on the end so it's always easier to remove in the future should I want to. Also taping this up, in addition to being safe and secure that it doesn't get into any of your mechanicals, just helps avoid any rattling or noise vibration that could occur when this riding around loose inside of there. So we've got that there. Everything looks pretty good. Going to want to locate the wire that's going to connect to the center console box USB. Make sure that you've got that laid off to the side here so you know where that's at. Sometimes these little plastic red clips can pop out from the part here that you'll reassemble. If that happens, that's okay. Just set them aside. You'll use them here, and I'll show you where this one will go. So the first step, grab that center console box, put this back in. The other good thing if you did do the rear center console box for that outlet is due to the additional wire length, you'll be able to tape that up inside there and get that secured in about this position is where you would come around from the back seat, plug that in, make sure you've got that wire that it's not going to come too far forward into any of your mechanicals, but you've got that length so it's pretty easy to install. From there, this will drop down in. The first thing you want to do is kind of lift it up again like this and snap in these front clips. You'll see that this kind of feeds into the sides, so you want to make sure that both sides have fed in together, and then snap those down in. When you've got it right, you'll see that your holes line up perfectly down in here for your bolts. You can then grab your 10mm bolts. Again, everything we're doing here is hand torque, so just hand start those. Hand start your second one. Now again, I find it's just faster to spin this around by hand until it seems to start to tighten. Same thing on the other side. Then once you've got it to where it's hand tightened, put this on and give it just one nice turn. Again, you don't want to over tighten this, but you want your center console to be secure. The next step here is to plug in this connector. It goes in sideways with the clip on the passenger side. That will snap right into there. You're then going to take this extra wire. You've got some tape that was on there before. You can reuse that and just lift that up. There's a little tab that comes down here off the center console box, and you're just wrapping that tape around that tab, securing those wires up and out of the way. The last step here, I'm going to put the rest of the center console back together. We can throw this felt back down in there while I grab this. On the side of the shifter is a harness clip that you'll need to be careful when you're disassembling and reassembling to make sure this is for the illumination on your shifter. That's what lights up this here. You also need to be very careful when you're reassembling this part. It's very common for this shifter to want to stab up into the leather. So you want to be very careful that you're aligning this hole, because I've seen people snap this all down and they've got that bolt just real tight against their leather. I've even seen it cut people's leather. So you just want to be really careful of those little tips and tricks that make this an easy install. So I kind of always set mine down in here like this, and then I get my leather boot here, and you're just going to feed the front part up into there. There are tabs all along in here. Try to show you these tabs here. You're just going to snap this metal trim piece that's in there, just snapping that into place into all of those clips. So you can work this off to the side. I have found it's easiest to just do it right here. You can even pull this all the way up off the boot and do it outside of the vehicle. It's just really not necessary, I found. You can just snap this in right here. I just start on one side and start working my way around. One of the tricks is making sure you get this pushed all the way up to this top part here. Then you can just use your thumb and hold that while you work the rest in to place, and then just feeding that down and around. And then it will almost want to just go right into place on its own. You can check that it's in place by pushing around onto the outside. You can see down here, this one's not in place. So I'm just going to reach up from underneath, and I'm going to work that in, kind of pulling until it snaps, pulling on the leather just gently. And again, that's now all snapped back into place. Now, this is that part I was telling you about. You want to find that bolt, and you want to feed it through so you're not piercing any of your leather, and find that like this. Then you can finally start to push this down and nestle it in. The first thing you're going to want to do once you have this part here is there's a snap up here in the front, so you can snap that and snap this. Now before I do that, I did mention also sometimes these little clips here can come off of this part. These simply go right here, and I'm just putting those back in so that those will snap into place for us here on the center console. There's one here, I think here and here. Once you again just get that lined up, one hit, you'll hear the snaps down here on the sides. It goes pretty easy. That is now back in. The last step you need to do, get your shifter. If you've got a trim piece like me, put that on, pull this down, spin her around. This does not go all the way down. You'll find that this is actually kind of surprising. You just thread this until it feels like it's tight, but it really can still move. You don't want to screw all the way down. It will go too far. Just thread it to where it's just about right. And then once you've got it squared up, you just pop that right up and on. After that, you're all good to go. You can just tuck this leather back down into there. Now you also know how to remove that if you've ever got food crumbs or anything else you want to clean out of there. It's really pretty easy to do. But we're all set. We've got our plug and we're good to go. I'm so excited to show you that this works. All right, guys, let's jump in, fire the taco up, and see how this works. Started the truck. I'm gonna go over here, turn on the power to the inverter. It's gonna come on at 400 watt. Got my laptop plugged in here. It is plugged in and charging. I'm gonna go ahead and put the taco into drive. Everything is still on, still operating. still functioning the way that it's supposed to. Thanks, guys.